Hello Internet, and welcome back to Let's Make Emotible. Today, if you can't guess from what's on my screen, we're going to be working with SQLite, and specifically we're going to be working with the Entity Framework, which is an ORM or Object Relational Model. So that's a tool that's going to let us connect our objects in C# to our data in our relational database, specifically our data in SQLite. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using an Entity Framework pack from NuGet, which is already pre-built, pre-packaged by Microsoft. It all works, or at least it worked the last time I tried it. I think it may still, no. Yeah, it's version 1.0.0, which means it's definitely the stablest version that's ever been released. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. We'll get back to that later. So this is their getting started page. I figured we'd start here because we're getting started. Well, that's that. So I think we've already done most of this. At least I've already done most of this. Walks through the basic things you need: Windows 10, Visual Studio, developer tools, new project. We've got all of that. So we don't really need any of that. What I'm going to do though is we need to install the Entity Framework. So there's two ways to install NuGet packages in Visual Studio. One of them is with the package manager, which is down here in this bottom window here. And this is going to run a PowerShell thing that's going to let you install them manually. If you know what package name you want, or you just want to manage them through the command line, you can do that. The other alternative is through here, and then you click Manage NuGet Packages, and this will allow you to manage NuGet packages specifically for projects. There's also, up here, a way to manage them. Yeah, this one, you can launch your console, or you can manage them for the solution. So we're going to use this one because I don't know why. Mostly because that's just what I do. So let's find the entity. This isn't going to work. We're looking in installed packages. We want to browse. There we go. Entity Framework. And I believe this is the one we want. I'm just going to check. So there is Entity Framework Core is the one we want, which isn't this. So the issue is there's a lot of entity frameworks. There's a lot of entity frameworks. There's 7 major versions if I remember. This one's on version 1.0. And it works with pretty much everything. If you're writing in C# and you need to interact with a database, this is where you start, because this is probably the easiest thing, short of actually writing the queries yourself. So instead of doing this, because this doesn't look like what we want, it's trying to give us ASP.NET stuff and things like that. We don't really want this. This looks like the version that you would use in either ASP or in WPF and standard applications. So that's not what we want. We need something that's compatible with the Universal Windows Platform, which is going to be this guy. So how this works is you just copy and paste into there. It does a ton of fun stuff, and then it breaks all over the place. Package restore failed, rolling back. Oh no. What happened here? I believe these are warnings or something else. Detected package downgrade from 4.0.1 to whatever. So it's got dependencies on older stuff. Well, that's cool. Why would you do this to me? Compile time reference to that. So let's not do that. Package restore failed. Cool. So when that fails, best thing to do, copy and paste. And let's try installing it this way. So this will do the same thing, except instead of getting that console, we're going to get an error here because it's still failing. And now I'm feeling like I'm missing something. Core. No, I said this worked earlier. I may have exaggerated a bit. I swear this worked. It's totally worked. Apparently not. What's going on? Okay, this walkthrough uses SQLite, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm curious, why does this work? I'm assuming no. The answer is no. Interesting. Very interesting. It'd be great if I knew why. Rolling back package. Okay, so it really doesn't like whatever we're doing. And I'm thinking it may not be built for the anniversary edition of Windows, which was released in July. So that's only 2 months old. So apparently, maybe they're 2 months behind. I don't honestly know. Nah, this isn't going to be helpful. I'm just clicking things. Updates? Universal Windows Platform. Let's update this and potentially break all sorts of things. Or maybe fix things. Okay, so package restore completed. That should be good now. Whoa. Hello. It's updating these are all the libraries that it's doing. It wants me to accept all of these licenses. So of course, I read all of those. There was a cut there. You didn't see it, but I definitely did click each one of those and read all of them. I enjoy that stuff. Or I'm just a masochist. One of the two. And that crashes Visual Studio. This is going swimmingly so far. Huh. Well then. Hey, welcome back. Okay. So that fixed it, I think. Let's try this again. Entity there. How's this? Do you work now? I'm guessing no. Hey, that's new. So if at first you don't succeed, make sure you're up to date. No, I guess that's my mistake there. I should know better. You probably do know better. Just ignored things. Okay, so now that this is installed, we get this fancy green check mark here. That means it's good. We also get a few options over here. We can uninstall the package, and we can change the version. This is usually more interesting because a lot of packages will have like pre-releases, and you can update to those, or in this case, we can back off. So if you install an update and then it totally breaks everything, we can revert back to an older version, which can become useful in some cases. But what you'll see that happened is we got this fun new guy over here. And so this is the Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQLite. So now we have SQLite support inside of our app. But we don't actually have anything to save into it. So if we jump back here, you'll see it's doing a bunch of fun stuff. Specifically, it's creating a context, and then it's attempting to migrate the database. We'll get into what that means in a second, but I'm going to jump. Oh, I had scrolled down. Sorry, skipping ahead of myself. This part, what we were looking at, is going to use what we're going to implement. So this is actually going to create our database context, and it's going to handle database migration. So when we add or remove columns or anything like that, anytime our schema is going to change, this is going to handle that in the app and actually migrate it forward, or handle dropping data, things like that. But we don't need that right now. We need this guy. And what this is doing is it's creating two models. So we have our objects, which are these guys, and then we have our relational data, which is stored in our database. What Entity Framework gives you a tool to do is it lets you convert these into your relational models without having to write the schema to create the tables and stuff. And then it can also map these values into those tables and backwards. And so you can use this to create a ton of fun stuff. In this example, they're creating a blog. We're going to be storing emoticons. So what we need is we need this context, which is just going to extend the DB context. And then we just need some models. That's literally all we need to do. So to get started, easiest way, just copy and paste. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to copy from there and go into here. And this is going to be called our models. And so our models are our data objects. Our view models are how our view sees those data models. And then obviously our views display the view models. So that's what we have. And then our commands act upon view models. So the layers we're kind of creating is we have a data layer in the very back end that's going to hold our data. And then that is going to expose itself into our view models. And those are going to be exposed to our views. But our views should never see our data, because if we ever change our data, we don't want our views to break. So what we're trying to structure is we're trying to create a folder structure to kind of represent that sort of thing. Yeah, I had better words there, but I suck at English, apparently. Models, we're going to call this our Emotible data context. Cool. So that creates that. We'll copy and paste what we had. Emotible data context. And so all of these references are missing. I forget that shortcut doesn't work. So there. Now we've got this. We're still missing our blog and our post. Sorry, the text got covered up there, but we're missing blog and post. And so just taking a quick look at what's in this, since I just kind of copy and pasted it, we have two database sets. We have one that's going to store a blog and one that's going to store a post. These are represented as kind of your tables. So if you're looking at a blog, then it's going to be in the blog table. You can actually name these specific things, and we'll get into how to do that shortly, because we're going to be using that. But this is how this works. You create DB sets. Those are your tables, and then they can interact and store your objects. And then all you have to do is these are just more or less lists. So you can run a LINQ query against these, and it will generate the query language that you need, execute it, map it to your objects, and return the list of objects or object that you wanted, which makes it super easy because you never have to actually deal with the language your database requires. So if you ever want to switch databases later, it becomes relatively easy to do. So I'm going to delete that one. DB set, we're going to call this an emote. Oh, that was wrong. We're going to call it an emote. And this is going to be our storage of emotes. And the one thing we didn't cover is what this guy is. So when we're configuring our DB context, we need a place to store it. Since we're working with SQLite, we need to store it in a file. So this is just storing it in the blogging DB. We want to store it in emoticons DB. We can store it in Emotible. There. So this is going to write our SQL storage to this file, and then we can just reference that. So now we need to actually create our emote, which is going to be this guy. Or I can just hit enter. Go away. Okay. Models. New. Class. Huzzah. Emote. We'll just call it an emote, because that's what it is. And this doesn't need to do anything fancy. All of the magic is handled under the hood by the entity framework. So we don't need to worry about any of this. It's going to do the magic. We don't need to modify our code to make it magic. So how this works, we're going to create a public int, and we're going to call this the ID. So that's just going to be the ID, we're going to have that be the primary key and the ID of our emote. And so how this works is we want a primary, is that correct? I don't think so. Sorry, I'm thinking of how this works. I believe it's just key. Cool. So this is our key. And then we also need to store the name of it. And so the reason I'm giving it a name is so these are searchable. And I also want to add Cortana integration. So you can, for example, ask to just have, I don't know, whatever the name of the emote is, copied to your clipboard, and it will do that for you. So the user probably is never going to really know these. They're just going to be able to ask for one of these, and it should pop up. Or they can search for it or whatever. So what really matters, though, is this guy. And we need a string of the emote text. And so that's really all we need. We don't need to do anything else here. That's literally there, we're done. We've got our entity framework mostly working. It isn't integrated in any fashion at all, but it should be working. Well, I lied. It shouldn't actually be working, but it should be connected-ish. Why is this giving me... Oh, okay. So the issue we're running into here is that emote is less accessible than emotes. And the reason this is happening is this is publicly exposed. So any class in anywhere can see this. But this guy, this emote, is only public to all of our internal methods. I believe that's what having nothing is. So it's less visible than everything else. So we need to expose that with the public, and that should be good. And now we've got both that and that. So we can jump back here and work on what we already had, which is this guy, which we're going to stick in our app XAML. So in here, we want using our, what do we want to call it? We can call it our emote database. Yeah, we'll call it the emote database. Why not? And that's going to equal a new Emotible data context. Cool. Just want to make sure I got that correct. Yes, I did. And then the only other thing we need is we need to migrate the database. So make this a variable so it's local and we don't have to expose it anywhere else. And then emote database dot, oh, interesting. It's not available there. I missed something. It's a database migration. That makes sense because that's what we're doing. So I already kind of talked about this, but what this is doing is it's going to apply the changes to our database. That may not make a bunch of sense right now, but we'll get to that. The way Entity Framework works is it generates those mappings as migrations. And so those need to be applied sometime. If you're doing ASP.NET, if you watched our audio game jam stream, if you watch that, we're doing this locally and we're actually generating it before we deploy. Here, we're trying to migrate every single time we launch the app if there's a change. So that's what this is doing. Going back here, there's a bunch of fun stuff. They're attaching onto the page load and then saving that context to this. And that's all they're doing. There's nothing about, add migration, got it. So they do talk about it a little bit. Create your own database. Okay, we don't need to worry about that. What we do need to worry about is this add migration. This guy needs to happen in here. Ignore all those errors. Those are from before. We don't care about those. But we do want to add a entity framework migration. And how this works is we need to call it something smart. Initial emote data model. Cool. And then we just execute this. And we should see, oh, shoot. So what we need is we need to, does this exist? No, it does not. We've run into this issue before. We need to go into Emotible. There we go. That's the name of a commandlet, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we're there. Let's try this again. Nope. Okay. Shoot, I've run into this issue before. It's a problem with .NET not recognizing things. So one sec, I'm gonna see if I can figure out what's going on here. Does not work without adding manual. Oh, okay. So the entity framework tools on UWP projects do not work manually without adding binding redirects. So how we need to do this is, I'm just going to copy this verbatim because I don't know about this stuff. I have not done it. We're going to need an app.config. So new file. We want not a blank page. We want something else. Text? No. Sorry, totally spacing. Sure, we'll make this work. App config. Sure. Got it. Paste. Done. Okay. Going back here. Add the following contents. Now that we have that, cool. Does it work now? I don't think it will. No, it doesn't. So I'm gonna go deeper. Any framework commands, so we will install the commands package. Oh, hey, I'm an idiot. Okay. Oh. Okay, I actually did need that pre. Okay, so. Well, how much time did I waste? Good 10, 15 minutes doing stuff because I skipped a direction. Oops. So what we needed is we needed to install the tools. The things that I was trying to use, those weren't included with the default package. Part of what they've been trying to do with the new Universal Windows Platform with .NET Core, with all of that stuff, is they've been trying to split packages off so they're smaller. So they don't carry around all the weight that they used to. So everything's kind of by itself. The problem with that is that you need two things in order to do this. But good news is it worked. And what this got us is it got us two things. It got us this thing, which I don't know what this is for, and it got us this thing, which is our representation of our relational model. So we've got our ID, emote name, and emote text and name. Those are the same things from this guy. They're the same, they've got the same name, they look the exact same, they're identical. But we've got some cool things. The table.column, it's an int, it's not nullable. It auto increments. So this ID will just keep incrementing automatically. We don't need to worry about it. We've got a nullable string for the emote text and a nullable string for the name. I don't really like that. So I'm going to actually remove this migration, that thing we spent so long trying to do. I'm going to take it away, or not. I don't think you need this, because you can only go up and down. You can't go like back or side to side, or it's not Willy Wonka's elevator. It only goes up and down. So we just removed those migrations we just generated, and I am going to set this to require. That's the name I want. And so Entity Framework has a number of tags. I'm using a few of them here. This key is what got us the auto incrementing ID. This required is going to make it non-nullable, so you can't null it out, obviously. And I think that's it. So we can actually run this again. We can add our migration again. And now we should see them pop back up. But the important thing is that now you can't give it a null emote text or a null name, because that doesn't make any sense. So we have data. That's good. And the important thing is we already have this guy. So our migrations for our database will already be applied. And our migrations are these things. So what happens when we're upgrading our database is this thing will run. When we're downgrading our database, this thing will run. So in this case, we're creating a table here, and we're dropping it when we're downsizing it. So if we ever need to go back, the easiest way to do that is to just drop the table. So this allows us to actually handle migrations, and we can actually roll back our database changes. And all of that's automatically generated. And now that we have Entity Framework tools actually installed and running, and I'm not being an idiot anymore, everything works, or it should work. I probably should stop saying that, because clearly I don't know what I'm doing. So let's go to this page load thing. What this is doing now is, I don't know why they're creating a new context each time. We probably don't need to do that, but they are. What they're doing here is when they load their page, they just load everything from the blogs. So all we need to do is, when we load our emotes, we just need to go there and load everything. That's it. So let's do that. Go into our, how do we want to handle this? Because I don't really want to stick it in our main page. I like these to stay as empty as possible, because when we start sticking things back here, it gets gross. So we've got our emote view model and our emote list view model. I think the best way to handle this may be a controller of some kind. So I'm going to create a controller. And this controller is going to handle it's going to be the in-between between our view models and our data models. So unlike a command, it's not going to be exposed to the view. The controller is hidden behind the scenes and is what is going to, it's more of a heavy lifter in that sense. And what this is going to be is, it's going to be our data access controller. And we don't need it to do much. We can just make it public. And we're going to want an access to our, what did we call it? We called it the Emotible data context, like so. Data context, and we'll create a new public constructor for that guy. And the next thing we want is we want a way to initialize it. And I'm going to make this an async task that isn't going to accept void. It's going to return a emote, which I'm not sure I like returning that emote, but just for getting started, this is what we're going to do. And this is just going to, just to demonstrate that it's working, we'll integrate it in the next video because this one is running long because I spent too much time debugging that other thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to run through this, and this is just going to add an emote, and then it's going to query the database, find it, and return it. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have add emote. Whoa. And this is going to do a task.run, and we are going to do a data context dot emotes dot add, and that's all we need to do. We can just add a new emote. I'm going to give it a emote text of hello, I'm an emote. And I'm going to give it a name. Whoa. It really doesn't like it when you screw up this syntax. Okay, name, we're going to call it first emote. Okay. So what this is going to do, create a new emote with an emote text equal to hello, I'm an emote, and name first emote. It's going to add it to the database. And then we can await this, make this function async. So in order to use await in a function, you need that function to be declared async. Otherwise, it will yell at you and it will not like you very much. All await does is it says, wait for this to continue before continuing on in this function. So it's kind of like saying continue with or something if you've used other languages. I think that's still a function in C#. But what this is doing is we're awaiting for this action to complete with some result. In this case, we are actually going to do a data context.emotes dot where, well, we'll just take the first one. So this is going to get the first element out of there, and we're going to return it, like so. So this task is now returning this first emote, and we're going to return the result of that. And so this is returning a asynchronous task that is going to be awaitable. It's going to add our new emote, and then it's going to return the first one. Pretty simple, super simple, but theoretically it should work, I think. Wasn't that convincing? I sounded super convincing. Data context equals new data, that thing. Sure. So we need to create this guy. I'm just going to go here, point out this thing. We need this to happen because that wasn't happening. And actually, yeah, this will be easy enough. We're going to do a using statement like that. And we're just going to stick this in a using statement for now. We're not going to use this. And the reason we're not going to use this for now is because I don't want to. And also, yeah, we'll fix this in the next one. So to do share this reference. Okay. So same thing's going to happen. We're just creating and disposing of our data context every time we call this function. Simple stuff. Sort of simple stuff. Kind of. Then, remember how I said I wasn't going to touch this class? We're going to add a new one here. Override. Sorry about that. Our load. Ooh, that's not what we want. We're going to actually do pretty much exactly what they had, except we're going to do it asynchronously because I like that. And it's probably not going to work because I make it up on the spot. But loaded. So when the page is loaded, we're going to do that. Main page.onloaded. And all I did was just autocomplete that, and then it just automatically generated this function for me. So I am going to create a new data access controller. We'll call it the DAL for data access layer. And we'll do DAL.add emote. Then all we need to do is await, sorry, not await, that's something else. And it will return an emote. You'll see it's going to give us this error because we're using await without an async method. And the funny thing is async works here because this is an event and this actually works. Normally this would get really weird because you'd suddenly be returning a task from this, but this still works. This is perfectly legal, and I think it's the only reason you're allowed to return void in a task, because that's really the only time it makes sense to do that. Anyway, what we're doing here is we're just getting our emote, and I think we can just stop this here. So we'll stick a breakpoint in and start this. And it should be good. Or not. We'll see. It's going to take a while to compile. Hopefully there's no compilation errors, because that would be embarrassing. And there we go. So what should happen is we should create our database, we should migrate it, and then we should actually build our database, perform our add emote. So if I step into this guy, you can walk through what's going to happen here. We're going to create our database. Then we're going to create an async task that's going to run. And we're going to get a sequence that contains no elements exception, which I don't like. Okay. No, I said that tasks were probably going to break things. Pretty sure that's what happened there. So we're going to go back to hit this, pull this out, pull that out, jump in here, and take that out and take those out. And then we're just going to return an emote. And that's just a case of me getting ahead of myself. Let's try this again and see what happens. So we hit here again, jump in, create our database, jump in here, get to our add. We'll run the add, and then we can run this. And that returns a sequence containing no elements. So that's the error we're getting. Okay, I get it. So what's happening is first is going to throw an exception if there's no elements in our database. And what I forgot to do is I forgot to actually save our query. So we're adding here, and then we're trying to get the first one. First throws an exception if it finds no elements. And that's where this exception is coming from. That's why this task didn't work. It wasn't because the task was broken, it's because I screwed up. We need to take emotes, and that's not how you do this. we need to save changes. And so normally this would happen at the end of your query. We're doing it kind of in the middle because we're doing a put and a get at the same time, which is silly. And we shouldn't be doing this, but this is sort of an example. So now this should work because we'll actually be saving to our database. Without that save, it doesn't push it out. And that's just a way so you can kind of batch things, I believe. But if we go in here, we'll do our add, we'll get our save, and we can step over this. We get our response, get out, and then this next step is going to set our emote, like so, and we can inspect this, and we get, hello, I'm an emote, and the name is first emote. So it works. That's not really how we want to do it, because we're not even passing in any real data here, but it works. And so now we have a SQLite database backing our application, which is pretty cool. So now our data should be persisted, it should work, we can migrate as we continue to improve the app, and we're going to need to migrate, but this allows us to actually get that data exposed in a safe spot and in a relatively quick and easy storage method that's scalable and we can bring it anywhere. So yeah, I hope that was interesting. I hope all of my mistakes don't make that hard to watch, but yeah, thanks for sticking with it and hope to see you guys in the next one. So thanks, Internet.